Menendez brothers Reddit discussions.
The psychology behind Lyle not being in a single fight. Obviously, it is possible he was in a few fights and just did not get written up. But we did hear he had to be moved to a special unit because he would not fight back when attacked. So why is that? He clearly was not trying to manipulate with that because he was facing live without parole. So it didn't really matter if he was in fights. We know Eric was in fights. Lyle is a big, sturdy dude, like Zrated said, but he just didn't fight back. I'm sure he had to stand up for himself a few times in prison. That is just the way it is. But he comes off as very passive. Is it due to how his father raised him? To just take the punches and not react? And do you think he would have been in more fights if he and Eric stayed together in prison since the beginning? Basically, if Eric got in trouble or if someone attacked Eric, I'm sure Lyle would have gotten involved. He wouldn't just stand there. He said himself that he wanted to be with Eric so that they could protect each other.
Lyle probably wants to be the opposite of Jose.
We know the media and general people at that time, majority were pointing fingers at Lyle, calling him violent, psychopath, and manipulative older brother who influenced his younger brother to unalive the parents. Those views of people affected Lyle a lot. I mean, we know that from Norma's tapes and book where Lyle himself says it, how public views him as cold-blooded murderer and Eric some timid little younger brother. I think he wanted to prove to people and to the court that he is not violent person that media and prosecutors tried to portray him. I am sure every time they appealed, whoever was looking at their appeal also looked at their prison records. I mean, he went on complete silent mode for nearly, 20 plus years or so? Because how much hate he got compared to Eric.
I feel that Eric likely felt the need to protect himself more due to him being the primary victim, and essentially going straight from one environment as a target to another. Makes sense to me. I think Lyle acted so out of character regarding the murders that he reverted back to his usual gentle, mediating persona. But I do think if anyone came for Eric, he'd probably smack a bitch up and yell,
"No more Mr. Nice, Lyle." It made me so sad in the Netflix documentary when he said that when they were separated, I feared I couldn't protect him.
That made me sad too. I can only imagine how he felt and all the dark scenarios that kept replying in his head. Not just what could happen to Eric by the other inmates, and we all know what often happens in male prisons, but also what Eric could do to himself. Eric was still suicidal.
Sadly, once you are convicted and transferred to prison, you aren't important anymore. No one cares about your well-being. At least that's how it is in American prisons. Their goal isn't to rehabilitate, but to punish the inmates. And if someone isn't mentally stable and kill himself, great. One extra free bed. Eric did say it's a very dangerous environment and that people have tried to stab him. Just crazy. Lyle also had an incident and was hurt, but we didn't get any details about that.
But I think present-day Lyle is proud that present-day Eric is confident and can stand up for himself.
I agree he would smack a bitch up who threatened Eric but wouldn't physically want to protect himself. Seems in keeping with Lyle's personality.
He was raised to be calm under pressure and not respond to provocation. But I also feel it's possible that he purposely didn't fight back so that he would be transferred to a more comfortable place in the prison.
This is my assessment as well. He was raised to be stoic and, like you said, be controlled under pressure. And most importantly, to assess a situation before acting, if a response will be beneficial to him or not, if fighting back will worsen the situation or not. I think he could have fought back if he wanted and felt it would be a more favorable outcome for him, but he assessed that not doing so would gain him more benefits instead. And it did. Besides, Lyle is used to getting hit and beaten up, then moving on. I compare it to warriors who have to prove themselves by going through a gauntlet. Jose often put him through one. Lyle said that his father raised him to do well in prison life. Another poster said Lyle was raised in combat. I agree.
I think Lyle uses his brain rather than his fists. That's why he has no fight violations on his prison records.
Lyle is a stoic character. You can see it on the stand. He's unusually calm and composed in the face of aggression and pressure. It's how he was trained to be.
He was trained from birth to take punches and not even cry after. I'm sure not fighting back when attacked just comes naturally to him. He also seemed to have a I give up mentality after the first trial. His comment about how the public scrutiny made him retreat into his shell, the Barbado Walters interview where he said he was expecting bad things to happen long before the verdict, him staying silent for 20 years. To me, it seemed like the first trial, the public reaction, the loss of Jill and Norma's betrayal kind of broke him. Eric on the witness stand seemed to have more of a temper. Maybe the murders unlocked something in him where he realized that he could fight back. He also seemed to be the stronger one mentality for the second trial and after. Lyle was suddenly the flustered one in the interview, and Eric was the one talking more. It was always the other way around before.
When I watched the Barbara Walters interview, it does show there's a shift in Lyle and Eric's sibling dynamic, though that may be because Lyle was so worn down compared to Eric. I was expecting Lyle to lead the conversation more, but his younger brother ended up talking more. Considering that Lyle begged Eric in the 17-page letter that he doesn't want to talk about the abuse. Then when he finally did, what did he get in return? Humiliated nationwide for telling his story along with his brother. It doesn't help that he gets called an evil sociopathic criminal mastermind in a lot of Menendez brothers' media. Dr. Vickery is right about Lyle being more fragile than Eric. He spent years suppressing his trauma and tries to appear strong. He's also tried to live up to Jose's expectations. He might also felt like he couldn't protect Eric because of his mistakes. Guess all the stress finally broke him down. Did Lyle ever reveal why he decided to finally talk to the media again after 20 years? I know he's the brother who gives more interviews now and shows up in pictures while Eric is more silent nowadays. Strangely, in the companion podcast, while Lyle spent more talking time with the director before Eric decided to join in, his younger brother ended up sharing more, while Lyle seems to be hiding some stuff again.
It's interesting how in that Barbara Walters interview Eric came off as the older, talkative, and protective brother. I suppose at that point in his life, Lyle was pretty beaten down and it's possible he did not even want to do the interview. Apparently they only did it to explain why they should be kept together in prison. And perhaps Lyle was not willing to talk about anything other than that.
I also think the first trial took a lot out of Lyle. I think he was ready for the gas chamber at that point of the second trial. If it broke him, but he didn't even want to testify or let the essay be known in the first trial, and for all of it to not have mattered at all? After all of that? For all his so-called friends, best friend, and fiancé to not only testify against him but lie under oath to get him the gas chamber must have affected him tremendously. He realized his father was right all along, and that must have compounded the hurt all the more.
Also, he spent most of his time completely alone and wasn't even able to distract himself.
Yes, all he can do is to be left with his thoughts, and Norma exploited his loneliness and insecurities. I don't understand why people don't have more empathy for him.
Yeah. Those insane indoctrinating head-to-heads that Jose had with Lyle were all about controlling emotions, like that passage that he can recite from memory. He learned he had to repress everything to get his father's approval. Silence is strength, or something like that. Jose was obsessed with appearing to be unfazed by everything, even though he would get angry a lot. Eric never had those talks because Jose didn't see him as worth indoctrinating. I think he was just a bit feisty in general. The incident when he fought with the gang members / other school kids, the incident that made the family move from Calabasas, just never with his father.